So, welcome everyone to RadChat Live at the annual meeting of the Surface Guided Radiation Therapy event hosted by Vision IT. We're joined by a lovely new guest, Mike. Can you tell us a bit about who you are and your role, please?
Well, my name is Mike Tallhamer. I'm the chief physicist for an organization called Advent Health. I run their Rocky Mountain region, which is basically the mountain time zone within the United States. So mostly Colorado, but anything in the mountain time zone. Most of our facilities in the West are located in Colorado proper, and so we have a number of facilities there. I have a physics team that we have a number of different LINACs, a number of different types of specialty radiation oncology programs that we run out of that region. I'm relatively new to Advent. We were kind of absorbed by Advent about a year ago, and so I've been working for Advent hospitals for a long time, but officially, I guess, wearing the Advent badge now, and so running those facilities for about a year and a half now under that banner.
Amazing. So for anyone out there who doesn't understand what it is that you would do day to day, can you give us a bit of a brief
Oh man,
oversight?
chief physicist, what do we do? If you ask my staff, probably nothing. No. No, as the chief physicist, we do a lot of program development. So we look at new technologies, evaluating different types of technologies that will be coming in, anything related to radiation medicine, so nuclear medicine, diagnostic imaging physics, or radiation therapy. My primary specialty is in radiation therapy, so I kind of hang to that domain most of the time, but I interact with a lot of nuclear medicine physicists as well that are handling a lot of our nuke med and diagnostic programs. And so it's mostly program development, staff training. We put together any type of training materials that are needed for our staff. We're very heavily, at least my group, related into research, so we're doing a lot of different research papers at the moment, working on different things from stereotactic radiosurgery to theranostics and a lot of new hot topics in radiation oncology, at least there in the States. And so bringing those programs in, just making sure staff is trained and making sure the physicians feel comfortable with what we're doing. And so the chief physicist is just kind of coordinating all of that. And then from day to day, I fill in for anyone that happens to call in sick. I become jack of all trades. I might be a staff physicist that day. I might be helping somebody at the machine. So I do a little bit of everything. So
Not much then, Mike.
not much, just whatever. I change light bulbs, sweep the floor, whatever you need me to do.
So in terms of kind of SGRT, what equipment and technology do you have in your department?
So SGRT, we have a little bit of everything. We have SGRT that starts in SIM, so we have all of our products come from Vision RT, but we've been doing SGRT for about 17 years now.
Yeah.
I put my first system in late 2007, early 2008. Started off with a static align RT system, one of our LINACs, and then we've moved to SIM RT, which is the 4D CT simulation package. We have the MAP RT product, which is their new collision mapping software that allows us to do a little more surface guided based planning. And then the newest thing that we've added in is the dose RT, which is the shrink off imaging system and all of that at the time of delivery that allows us to kind of visualize what we're treating in real time. So it allows us to actually see the beam delivery on the patient. And so we have a little bit of everything. We try to be kind of masters of all things and see how these technologies are kind of changing the way we practice. And but from an SGRT standpoint, we treat 100% of our patients with SGRT, all 100% tattoo-less, every indication from palliative bone mets all the way through trigeminal neuralgia and functional radiosurgery diseases. And so we like to dabble in a lot of things.
The power of having money in America.
That's true.
I didn't want to say it because everyone always ribs you, don't they?
Yeah, they always give me a hard time. They're like, well, you got one of everything. I'm like, well, part of the reason why I like being with Advent is they satisfy my desire to play with lots of different toys. And so Advent is a very forward-looking organization as far as if something's new, they're not afraid to kind of be the first to try it. We have a lot of really cutting-edge physicians that are attracted to the programs that come from a lot of different academic backgrounds. So we get, while we're not an academic institution, we're not affiliated with the university per se, we get a lot of academic practice physicians that come in that move into community practice but still have that desire to do research. And so they kind of drive the ball forward for us, and they like having physicists who like to tinker with all these little new things. And so we try to accommodate them because it also kind of scratches that research itch for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the dose side of things, I suppose thinking of conventional radiotherapy, you don't get to see any dose wash or anything on contralateral side, or if someone's moved slightly during the treatment, whereas dose RT you can see that. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed quite a big difference on patient side effects or anything like that?
We've had the technology for a year, so any like long-term side effects, it's probably a little too early to say. if we're mitigating any long-term side effects, but we are seeing lower incidence of skin reaction because we're actually catching overlapping fields. So a lot of our machines, in fact all of our machines currently have HDMLCs on them, for example, and so we don't do a lot of single isocenter breasts, so we do a lot of match lines and things like that. And so the shrink-off imaging system is very good at catching, field overlaps that shouldn't be there, or fields that are bleeding down into another field because of maybe body habitus or patient compliance and things like that. So we're catching those things in fraction 1, fraction 2, fraction 3, and being able to adjust those either through planning or through patient education to help them be a little bit more compliant with the instructions from the therapist. Like I said, we've been doing SGRT for 17 years, and so we thought, we're not going to see anything with this. It's going to be interesting. We're going to see some stuff with the dose, but we're doing a lot of stuff with surface guidance. We're setting up the entire posture of the patient using surface guidance. We've done it for a very long time. We're pretty good at what we do, and we didn't expect to see a lot of different things, but you catch a lot of things that are administrative controls that you just rely on human habitual selection within systems, that there isn't really any hard stops. There's no hierarchy of effectiveness outside of just telling someone, hey, select the right port phone policy, or make sure that the patient's hips are tugged to one side or the other. And you think with all the technology, all the toys that we have, that we would be able to do that in a really high degree of certainty. And we still catch little things. Now, are they mission critical things? Some of them are, some of them aren't, but you always are looking for this ALARA principle. You're always trying to deliver as low as reasonably achievable for any patient's exposure to radiation. And so we just find little things. When I first got Dose RT, I told you it runs like a nightmare reel of all the problems you didn't know you had. And now you can see them, so you either have to fix them or you have to choose to ignore them.
I was going to say, has the amount of protocols you now write
Yes,
gone up?
yeah, I'm getting really good at writing protocols and corrective action, and yeah, I'm getting good at that. I should have added that to my duties when I was telling you what I do. But yeah, there's a lot of different things that we've tried to address, just from a, we see these little issues where we could be better. Like in my talk today, we were talking about how it's changing our plan robustness. We're looking at, a lot of times we do a plan on a CT that's a frozen view of that patient at that point in time. And then you have a patient who comes in and doesn't quite want to comply with the way they lay down or something like that. And you would think your plans are robust to those things. You try to account for these things mentally as you're doing those plans and doing your physics checks and sending those to the machines and have the therapist do their checks. And you think you have enough kind of layers of that Swiss cheese model to make sure errors don't reach the patient, but you find little holes in your Swiss cheese from time to time with the shrink-off imaging system that you wouldn't see otherwise, because it's just visually apparent what's going on. And so that helps you kind of backtrack into your process and kind of put your finger on those little holes in the ship, so to speak, and you try to plug them.
Now I'm going to ask you a question, and I would imagine that your response to this question would be very different to maybe other people who have implemented lots of different technology when it comes to SGRT. But from an implementation perspective, how have you found it? Because you use so much technology, I suppose it's kind of part and parcel. The staff are like, oh, here he comes again. He's adding something else.
Yeah, my therapist, when they see me round the corner, if the chief of physics rounds the corner, says, I got some news for everybody, they are like, oh, here it comes. What are we going to get into? We are usually very much, at least in the institutions, like the couple institutions where I spend most of my time, where my main offices are, we're always doing something. We have the first or second in the world of something that we're playing with. And that is due to my nature as a tinkerer. I came from academics. I came from deep space imaging physics before I was a medical physicist. So I have lots of eclectic interests, and I'm always willing to volunteer my staff to be the guinea pigs. And so I always know that
there's... Is your staff turnover high?
Yeah, no, actually that isn't. That's the thing that yes, exactly. I take great pride in the fact that my staff usually enjoys Florida. It's not that it's not hard, because I mean, anytime you're on the bleeding edge of something, or you're putting in new software every other month and a new update, it is hard on the staff, because there's a learning curve, there's a practice pattern that has to be met. We obviously don't want to see quality be reduced, so going back to writing lots of protocols and making sure everybody understands. But when I do come into the room, there's that like, what's he coming in here with? Is it just to say hi, or is there like a groan, like, oh, here we go again, what are we doing? So our implementation strategies are typically very, very controlled, but they go through our physics team. I usually present to the physics team and say, hey, we've got an opportunity. Again, they're all opportunities. We don't have to take them all, but my goal is to have a staff that's always learning and always trying to move on. My goal is to see all of my physicists become chief physicists somewhere else, because that means that they're progressing in their careers and they're doing those things. And so we present them as opportunities, not you have to do this. And sometimes you have to do this because maybe it's an opportunity that I really want, but it's one of those things. But when we're implementing those technologies, it's usually in a very controlled manner. The last thing we want to do is implement something that's cool that puts our patients at risk. And so we're very concerned about degradation of quality, but we also want to contribute to the field and be able to say, hey, our center gathered the data for the FDA clearance of this device, or after it was cleared, we were the first ones to implement this, and we were finding these things, and this is how it improved our practice patterns, and why I love coming to meetings like the SGRT meetings and things like that, because it allows us to convey that knowledge. Just doing it to do it may satisfy an itch to do a research paper or publish something, but sometimes we publish, to be completely honest, I'm a very practical person. Sometimes I publish papers that I know 4 people are ever going to read, probably understand. And so papers are nice.
That's just the nature of physics.
That's just the nature of being a physicist. And so you would hope that all of your research, forwards the field in some way, but we're practical and realistic. You don't want to just be writing papers for the fact of, I put my staff through a nightmare to gather a bunch of data so that we can put through a paper and that's it. You would hope that it improves practice. And so our physicians are very forward-looking, like I said. They want to improve their practice. They want this technology to be a benefit to the patient. So our rollout of technology is always with that in mind. So we would never choose to do something just simply to do it if we thought there was maybe a detrimental impact to our process that would make our quality go down. And so we're selective at what we do, but I am a perpetual tinkerer, and so most vendors, they come to me because they know I'm always in it to hear what the next cool thing is, and then we kind of have to assess it from a reality standpoint as well. And
what's it like working with the Line RT?
A Line RT, I am a dyed-in-the-wool SGRT proselytizer, so I tell everyone that up front. That's my disclosures. I came from a deep space imaging physics background, so I did a lot of satellite imaging, a lot of deep space imaging and processing, and so I was very interested in optics. And when I saw a Line RT, 2005, 2006, their first Astro. It's usually like a one-man table back by the bathroom that nobody knows who these new people are. Cheaper. Yeah, and I was like, so I'm always like trolling the new tables in the back, the real tiny companies, and I was like, wow, these guys are going to change the way we do radiation oncology. I told that to everybody when I came back, and I convinced our medical director to put the first system in, and he was like, Mike, if this goes sideways, this is on you. And I was like, I will take it. And it went sideways. it was not well. I was very young at the time. It was 15 years ago. I didn't have all this back then. And so I've earned all my gray hairs at this point. But I approached it as a naive young physicist who was used to doing research but not used to that clinical practice. And so we rolled it out in kind of a ham-fisted way, and it didn't go incredibly well. And I learned from that experience that, hey, if you just drop something on people and say, hey, this is a great technology, figure out how to use it, it's not going to be very successful. And so I tell everyone, SGRT taught me how to be a better chief physicist, how to be a better clinical physicist, because I didn't do it right the first time. And so as we thankfully I had very forgiving physicians and therapists who, while they knew what my car looked like, didn't flatten my tires for just dropping it on them and saying, hey, figure this out. They were like, hey, this young guy, he's excited, but he didn't probably do it the best way. And so they were very forgiving with me. And so we learned how to roll that technology out. And our second implementation went much, much smoother, and it really bolstered the confidence in the staff. And so working with the Line RT has changed. We've been tattoo-less since 2013, so we're now over a decade of not tattooing our patients. It has completely changed the outlook of how we handle things in radiation oncology, and that was just the springboard to get us to SIM-RT, which was the optical guided CT platforms, and that opened the door for MAP-RT, and that opened the door for DOSE-RT, because the confidence level was there. It wasn't just like every time Mike wants to roll out technology, it's going to be this ham-fisted, throw it into the clinic and see what happens. It was a much more controlled and learned process. So I always tell everybody, Line RT kind of was my first foray into changing a practice pattern and failing miserably, and then having to backtrack and eat a little bit of crow and say, I'm really sorry, guys, I probably didn't do that the best way I should have. And I could have handled it differently and just said, hey, this is how I'm going to do it. You're going to have to deal with it. But I don't think it would have been successful. And so I always do credit with my growing experience after leaving residency.
You
was
redeemed
actually
yourself.
Exactly trying to implement something and doing it poorly was a good learning experience for me. So that first one didn't go well, but thankfully over the years it's gone extremely well. And we no longer put in Linux without surface guidance. It's just not an option. We're putting in 2 Linux right now. and it's just a standard part of practice because the physicians have wholeheartedly bought into a program of this size. So.
Thank you for being so honest.
Yeah.
Nice to hear. We like to end our episodes with top tips for anyone listening. But before we do that, I know you mentioned about your talk. You mentioned a really nice phrase. I was wondering if you might just relive that for people who weren't there today.
I had a lot of phrases. What phrase would that
be? The Umwelt.
Oh, the Umwelt. Oh, yes.
I did that in my best German accent.
Yes, I am American, so I will butcher any language that you give me. I will do it shamelessly. No, but I do a lot of lectures for students, so residents and students, and I try to explain to them the idea of the perception of how we perceive reality is basically our reality. And so the Umwelt is a German phrase that defines a organism's sensory perception of the world. So the example I gave in my talk, bumblebees see the world in ultraviolet. Bats and dolphins have echolocation. Some birds can sense the magnetic field of the earth and use it for navigation. Ticks, for example, are completely deaf and blind, but they sense the world through vibration and butyric acid. There's lots of different types of Umwelts. And in medicine, we're very good at expanding the Umwelt for humans. We get CTs, we have MRIs, we're looking at proton densities and CT densities and ultrasound and all kinds of cool things that humans just have a way of expanding their Umwelt. And SGRT does that in radiation oncology. So we've done it through stereoscopic vision with aligner T. We have 3D mappings now of our patients that we can align to instead of 3 points in space. And now DOSE-RT is expanding that Umwelt even farther and allowing us to see the shrink-off radiation that's naturally emitted from a patient for free anytime we deliver radiation to their bodies. They're emitting this very faint light, and now we've found a way to manipulate that light and visualize that dose on the patient in real time, and that expands our Umwelt and gives us more information. But I explain to my students that that's just data. Data has to be turned into insights. So you have to learn how to interpret that information. And just because you get it doesn't mean you're going to interpret it very well, just like I didn't implement aligner T very well. I did not have all of the information I have as such an old man now. And so expanding our Umwelt is something that I always tell our students that that's our goal, is to basically not just expand it for the sake of expanding it, but expanding it so that we can use it for the betterment of our patients. So.
Incredible. I love it.
If you had one tip to give to people who are thinking about surface cardioradiotherapy, what would you say?
I would say do it. It's going to be hard. I tell everyone you can't unlearn what you're going to see. SGRT is one of those things where you have to be willing to understand that you don't do everything as well as you want to do it. You like to think you're doing your best job, and you always should be doing your best job. But SGRT will expand your practice in a way that basically shows you, hey, there's a little ways you can improve things. Just like with DOSE-RT, we've been doing SGRT for a very long time, and you add a little bit more, you expand that Umwelt, and you see little things that you could do better. And it's going to either drive you to do better, or it's going to drive you into frustration that you're seeing things that you just don't want to believe are happening. And some of that takes humility, but I suggest to everyone, do it because it's going to make your practice better. So.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming.
All right. Well, thank you.